welcome to the show. I'm so excited to welcome you here.
Well, it's wonderful to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. When your team reached out to me and was like, hey, would you like to talk to the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Treasury Department? I'm like, say less.
Well, my friends really enjoy your content, and I've got a chance to check it out. So thank you for what you do to help people, especially people from communities of color, get information about how to build wealth in this country.
Absolutely. It's a passionate topic of mine, and I want to talk all things Dinero with you. So let's dive right in. Let's kind of set the stage from a Civics 101 perspective. Can you first tell us what the heck does the U.S. Treasury Department do, and how does the work that you guys do impact everyday Americans?
So let's just start with that cash you hopefully have in your wallet, and we print that cash. So any dollar bills, coins that you have ever seen are printed by the U.S. Department of Treasury. And in addition to printing the money, we also collect taxes. But in addition to collecting taxes, we help people get things like the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is money back in your pocket, and the Child Tax Credit. We also do a number of other things throughout the department to try and help grow the economy and create jobs. But those are probably the two things that people are the most familiar with.
Okay, great. Can you talk a little bit about what the relationship is between the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve? Because I think sometimes people get them confused.
I think they often get it confused. And the thing that's the most confusing is if you came to visit the Treasury Department and you're here in front of Treasury, for a long time across the street, we had a Bank of America. So we would often see tourists coming and taking pictures outside Bank of America, thinking it was the Federal Reserve
Oh,
building.
wow.
So to clarify, what we're responsible for is everything from taxes to printing the money and helping the president create the budget. The Federal Reserve is in charge of monetary policy. So where are we setting interest rates? And they're independent from the president, whereas the secretary and myself, we work directly for the president.
Got it. Okay. So you guys kind of work hand in hand to create America's economic policies, and you guys are the ones writing the checks.
Yeah. And also helping to collect some of the money for revenues to pay for things.
Absolutely. Okay, so I've got a bunch of listener questions that were submitted, and we're going to talk about all the things that are top of mind for people, especially during this election season. Let's start with inflation. I think everybody's got the economy on their minds. And one of the questions that I got was, will we ever see prices go down to pre-pandemic levels?
Yeah. And I think it's a great question. And one thing I'll say from the outset is I work for the government, so I can't talk about the election, but I can talk about the economy because it's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about and doing things about. And I think inflation is something that has impacted all of us. And for so long, the prices were so high. And I think we started to see prices come down because of the actions the Federal Reserve took, but also because of the actions the president took. And one of the best examples, and the thing that matters a great deal to my family members and my friends, is the cost of gas. At one point, the cost of gas was over $5 a gallon. And the president decided to use gas from our strategic reserve and to take a bunch of actions to help us produce more gas in the United States, as well as clean energy. And today, the average price of gasoline is under $3.15 around the country. We've got to do more to bring down those prices, but we're focused on it. And I think the other place where I know I've seen some of your videos and you've talked about that people of my generation and yours are concerned about is the ability to buy a house.
Right.
The cost of housing is quite high. And here again, the president's been very focused on what we have to do, which is we've got to build more housing in this country. And we've got to build housing in places where people want to live and where people live already in order to help bring down the cost of housing. And we've got to make sure that people who are first-time homeowners have the ability to get some of that housing because as you know well, and you've talked about, the best way to build wealth is to be able to get into a house. So the biggest thing we've got to do is increase the supply of housing in the same way we've increased the supply of oil in order to bring down gas prices. So my hope is that we will see both prices continue to come down on things like gasoline, but we're also going to get more things like houses that will help make prices reasonable so that more young people have the ability to buy houses.
So how does the federal government influence that? Can you guys connect with home builders, provide incentives? How does that work?
So the president and the vice president have announced a plan that includes incentives to build more housing. So one of the tools we have at the Treasury Department is this thing called the low income housing tax credit. And what we literally do is give home builders a tax credit, not just to build housing, but to build housing for people who don't make $1 million or $1 billion and allow them to live in a reasonable price. So what the president and the vice president have done is they've called for a set of policies that give out additional incentives in order to build millions of additional homes in this country. Doing that will help make sure that families of all kinds of sizes, middle class family, working class families have access to affordable housing going forward.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Inflation Reduction Act. I think the president has hung his hat on that as being one of his greatest accomplishments, but I don't know if a lot of people actually know the details of what's in that legislation. Can you give us like some high level impacts that people should be feeling because of this?
Yeah, and let me just talk about what the goals are of the climate provisions specifically in the Inflation Reduction Act. There are three of them. One, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the air. And the impact of this on our families is it's going to help reduce everything from smog in the air to the other things that are contaminating your children. I grew up in the Los Angeles area, and every day I'd walk outside and deal with smog. The goal is to make sure that our kids don't have to do that, but that we're also addressing climate change at a broader level. Number two is creating good paying jobs. And the reality is that one of the things that we have to do to fight climate change is to manufacture more clean energy goods in America. Think about solar panels, heat pumps, electric vehicles. In order to do this, we need to have people who can do this work. And one of the things the president pushed for in the provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act were these provisions that help lead to prevailing wages, which is basically a way to make sure that the people who are building these new manufacturing plants earn a living wage. And then the final one is helping to build up our resilience so that when things happen like Russia invading Ukraine and gas prices won't go up as much because we'll have, in addition to oil, we'll have clean energy sources to help keep prices down. So for individuals, if you own a home, you have the ability to take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act by using those tax credits to help buy energy efficient windows if you're replacing the windows in your house. If your air conditioning breaks in a place like Las Vegas or California when it's really hot, you can replace your heating and cooling system with a heating and cooling system that's more energy efficient and get a tax credit for that. In addition, if you're going to buy a new car or a used car that is electric vehicle, we have up to $7,500 tax credits to help people get into these new clean energy products that, in addition to costing less, over time will mean you have to spend less on energy going forward. I'd recommend that anyone who's interested in this go to cleanenergy.gov to find out more information about how you can take advantage of these tax credits.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are understanding the real economic impact of climate change on their wallets when we think about something as simple as like your cost of property insurance. Property insurance rates are being directly impacted because of climate change. And so I'm glad to hear that the administration is prioritizing it as something that not only affects us from an existential standpoint, but it hurts us in our wallets too.
Completely true. And I think the insurance piece is an important one because when you think about housing, we all talk about the impact that interest rates and the lack of houses have. But insurance costs are a big part of cost if you live in certain states, for example,
Right.
in California or in Florida. And lots of those are tied to natural disasters that have been driven by a changing climate.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk to the entrepreneurs that listen to the show. How does the Treasury Department's policies support small business resilience during times of economic uncertainty?
I think this is the most important thing that we can do. And when I was taking this job, one of the things the vice president talked to me about from the beginning during my first interview was what can we do to make sure that we're getting small businesses in this country access to two things. One is access to capital so they can invest in their dreams. And then the second one is access to customers. And on both of those things, the Treasury Department is involved in helping. Can I ask what state are you located in right now?
I am in Florida.
Okay, so for what we're doing at the moment is we're producing these state toolkits that include all the programs the federal government has available in each state for small businesses. The other day, I did a call with Virginia where we announced 55 programs the federal government has for Virginia that can help small businesses get access to things like capital, so money for you to grow your small business, but also to customers. One of the best customers is the federal government and helping people get access to not only grants, but ways in which they can provide their services to the federal government. And then finally, technical assistance, because you are an entrepreneur, you're running your business. That doesn't also mean that you're an accountant and a lawyer. You need those things. So we are creating grant programs to give you that money as well. One of the things that I'd recommend is that you go to the Treasury Department website where we have a number, so treasury.gov, where we have a number of these toolkits per state on there to see what's available. One of the things that we're proudest of is the fact that we've given a great deal of money to community oriented banks that are providing money to small businesses. And oftentimes when people think about a small business, they think about dry cleaner or they think about a restaurant. But the reality is that influencers are running small businesses. You're
Right.
entrepreneurs. Lots of people are turning their side hustles into their main hustles, and they are small business owners as well. We want to make sure they get access to these programs. We've had a particular focus on places and small businesses that have been underserved, for example, in the Latino community, where you have a number of people who have an entrepreneurial spirit, but have had trouble getting access to capital for various reasons. We put $1.6 billion into Latino owned banks around this country that are putting them in a position to lend over the next 10 years up to $58 billion. And they're going to be the institutions that lend to those small businesses that are being started in communities all over the country. One of the things I'm proudest of is over the last 4 years, we've seen Latino small businesses grow by 40%. And now the question is, how do we make sure those small businesses become bigger businesses?
Absolutely. I think Latinos are very quickly becoming a very big driving force in the economy in the US. And so I'm glad that we're not being ignored.
If you think about the recovery we've had and the fact that we've seen inflation come down while we've been able to maintain a healthy jobs in this country, a lot of that's been driven by Latino labor force participation. We have, at this point, the highest rate of Latino labor force participation in our history. And that's helped us recover from the pandemic in a way that, frankly, is better than any country around the world. So, in lots of ways, Latinos are helping to drive the recovery and the economic boom we're experiencing today.
Amazing. All right, let's talk Social Security. Folks that are of my generation are being told it's probably not going to be solvent by the time that we can collect. What can the federal government do to shore up the program?
So I totally disagree with that. And the reason I disagree with that is because as a country, we've made a commitment to our elderly to take care of them. And I think it's a commitment that we're going to keep for our parents. And I expect that our kids and their generation will keep for us. But in order to do so, I think the thing we're going to need is money. And the challenge we have right now is that because of decisions that were made during the last administration, instead of raising additional revenue from wealthy taxpayers, we've actually cut the amount of revenues we're bringing into the government. So a big part of this and a big part of the discussion we have to have as a country is how do we continue to make investments in things like our infrastructure, in things like clean energy, and also in our children, while also raising the revenues we need to invest in the generation of people who helped build the country and invest in things like Social Security. I'm confident that we're going to make the right decisions because we've always made the right decisions when it came to things like Social Security, but it's going to require us as a country to make those decisions. And it's one of the things that I look forward to because I think it's the type of discussions that we're going to be coming to in America from a position of strength. If you look at the stock market, it's at historic highs. We have historic high levels of employment. We've created 19 million small businesses over the last 4 years. So we can afford to do these things. We just have to make the choices to do so.
Absolutely. So the IRS is under the Treasury Department. And so since tax season is coming up, can you tell us about the direct file program?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. And I think from my standpoint, people often, and this is true in the community I'm from as well, people are like, oh no, tax season's coming up. But the reality is taxes is something that we all pay because most of us, we get a W-2. So for me, my taxes are taken out of my paycheck. And that's true for most of the people who follow you. But for the wealthiest people in this country, many of them don't earn a paycheck and many of them don't pay the taxes that they owe. So one of the things the IRS has been focused on is making sure that the wealthy pay their fair share. But in addition to doing that, they're making it as easy as possible for working class and middle class people to file their taxes also. I know that most people don't know this, but the average American spends over $200 filing their taxes each year, and it takes them more than 13 hours. So we created a program called Direct File that allows you to file your taxes for free and also cuts down the amount of time it takes for you to file your taxes. And for many Americans, especially Americans who come from communities of color and may speak a different language, they often don't take advantage of the tax credits that they're eligible for. For example, if you earn a certain under, let's say $70,000, you may be eligible for the earned income tax credit, which is up to $7,500 in money back from the IRS. And a number of people just don't take advantage of it. Direct File will help you know if you're eligible for the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. So what I'd recommend to anyone who's watching this is that as you get ready for filing season, you go to irs.gov and you check if you can use Direct File. And if you're a simple filer, you get a W-2 and your taxes are relatively simple, Direct File is the right program for you. If you're a billionaire who has partnerships and complicated taxes, Direct File is not intended to help you file your taxes.
Okay. All right. Good to know. We're going to make sure to link all of those resources in the episode show notes. Wally, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
Financial education is critical to each one of us because we need to plan for our financial futures. The federal government wants to help, and we are offering resources. But one of the things that I'm grateful for is people like you who are helping people who may not have learned about this from their parents or in school understand that planning for your financial future is possible. And the thing that we're focused on is making sure that Americans have the opportunity not only to earn an income, but to earn the type of wealth that allows them to plan for a future in which their children do better than them. So thanks for taking the time today. It's great to get to spend it with you.
Thank you so much for being here.
No problem at all.